Greetings and salutations, it is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be Batman. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found throughout the world. Today I wanted to talk about another graphic novel that I read, one that focuses on insanity and prison penitentiaries and Batman, of course. I want to talk about this, Arkham Asylum, a serious house on a serious earth, by Grant Morrison and Dave McKean, two people that I don't think I've stumbled across in my comic book reading experience so far. I've heard of Grant Morrison, but I haven't heard of Dave McKean. And the front cover is interesting. It shows what I think to be Batman standing near a light bulb. But, you know, I don't know what that symbolizes. And then inside the light bulb is a tiny brain thing. Very interesting. A pretty demented and wild comic that I can't wait to talk about. For those that don't know, Dave McKean is a wonderful artist, and I want to talk more about his work later in the video. But Grant Morrison is a comic book writer who's been doing it for a while. They wrote The Flash, Animal Man, a couple other comics. They are also responsible for All-Star Superman, which I believe is regarded as one of the best Superman comics ever made. It's about, Superman being diagnosed with like terminal deafness or something like that. Superman's gonna die, so he spends the rest 12 issues trying to better the life of people in the world. It's a very personal look at Superman, and I've heard great things about it. Grant Morrison is also the co-creator of the show Happy on Sci-Fi, about a detective working with an imaginary unicorn creature to solve crimes or something like that. I didn't finish the first season, but it's still a bizarre show. It has Christopher Maloney, so that's always fun to watch. But Grant Morrison is a pretty big name out there. I like their work in terms of what I found so far, understanding that All-Star Superman is one of the better comics, and that Arkham Asylum is pretty good writing, and I like the allusions to other work that Grant Morrison makes in their writing. So without further ado, let's talk about this comic. I will do a summary, some analysis, and we will move on from there. So Arkham Asylum begins as Joker and the other inmates at Arkham Asylum are leading a riot. They have only one demand, and Commissioner Gordon informs Batman that one demand is that Batman shows up at the asylum. And when Batman shows up, Joker releases one of the hostages and lets Batman inside, where he goes over his plan that some of the inmates are running the asylum now, and some of the professionals, the psychologists and whatnot, have stayed behind in order to make sure that treatment is still happening. The Joker informs them that the other asylum inmates, including some of the rogues from his rogues gallery, are going to be hunting him throughout the night. He has no say in the matter. Joker's just going to go start killing people if Batman doesn't agree to this. And so Batman has until midnight to survive. Otherwise, they're going to kill him in the process. And so Batman runs away as the villains contemplate when they're going to chase after Batman. Joker says he has an hour, but everyone convinces Joker to just make it 10 minutes. And so they chase after Batman at that point, and Batman runs into a number of villains along the way, including Two-Face, who has been given a tarot deck in his his trademark scarred coin has been taken away. The doctors believe that this will help him with his decision making, although it has ruined his personality because now Two-Face can't make simple decisions anymore. He has to contact the tarot deck, and he's pooping on the floor, essentially. He's covered in his own feces because he's unable to make a decision about going to the bathroom at this point. So Batman notes, the coin was enough to help Two-Face in his decisions, even if it was a bit black and white. He also runs into Clayface, who is, in this version, Clayface's skin is diseased. I don't think Clayface can morph. He just has skin diseased skin, and Batman doesn't want to be touched by him. He also runs into Scarecrow, the Mad Hatter, Maxie Zeus, who is still receiving electrical shocks. And I really like Maxie Zeus as a villain. I don't think the comic books or the movies or TV shows do enough to explore Maxie Zeus and how Maxie Zeus is the victim of the institutionalization process because they keep giving Maxie electric shocks, and that only strengthens their belief that they are actually Zeus incarnate. And so Batman also runs into Killer Croc and manages to defeat him in a very interesting scene that has Amadeus Arkham's ramblings layered over it. An underlying story that it goes on throughout the story is that of the past with Amadeus Arkham. When he was a child, his mother had a mental illness, and she ended up killing herself over it. And Amadeus grew up to become a psychologist, and he worked with Mad Dog Hawkins, who frequently killed his victims, skinned them, and reveled in their deaths. And he noted that a lot of the inmates in the prisons in Gotham were the victims of mental illness. So Amadeus set about creating the Arkham Asylum in order to treat those with mental illness, before they can be released back into the world. His first patient is his first patient is Mad Dog Hawkins. Mad Dog at this point has killed Amadeus's wife and daughter after he escaped from prison, and so Amadeus subjects him to electrical shocks until eventually Mad Dog dies. And it's indicated that he does that to other patients as well, enacting a sort of vengeance upon the mentally ill for the terror that they've caused to him and others. The guilt of that gets to him, and throughout the rest of his life, he's kind of hounded by these feelings of guilt and his own insanity, which seems to be growing within him. And he starts to see the symbol of a bat around, which is interesting. And ultimately, his story ends when he's committed to Arkham Asylum because he kills a stockbroker in 1929. So things did not turn out well for Amadeus Arkham. Meanwhile, Batman is fighting off his rogues gallery when he stumbles upon Dr. Cavendish, who informs him that he released the prisoners in Arkham Asylum because he believes that Amadeus Arkham was speaking through him or something like that. One of the other doctors ends up killing Cavendish, which Batman says he deserves, which is a darker side of Batman. Eventually, Batman manages to get back to Joker, and he hands Two-Face his coin, which Batman believes will help him better with his decision making. Two-Face says, I'm going to flip this coin. If it's heads, Batman gets to leave. If it's tails, Batman dies. He flips the coin. It's heads, so Batman leaves. And Joker says, if you ever find yourself struggling to deal with the asylum out there, you're always welcome to come back here, Batman, indicating that, it's the real world that's crazy. And so that's where the story ends. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit that I want to talk about here. The first is how Grant Morrison seems to be making allusions to Alice in Wonderland. It's easy to see that with the Joker's weird and demented design, he kind of resembles the Cheshire Cat And then you also have the characters of the Mad Hatter and Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and references to Alice. Those characters are in Alice in Wonderland, but they're also Batman villains. Kind of similar paths throughout there. There's also the fact that there's bizarre logic in the asylum. In Arkham Asylum. And much like there was bizarre logic in Alice in Wonderland, where it doesn't matter how much sanity Batman tries to employ in the asylum, you have to deal with the illogical in the asylum in order to successfully get out, such as giving Two-Face back his coin, which doesn't seem like the rational option, but that's how the asylum works. And that was how Alice in Wonderland worked. I do like that. I do like how Grant Morrison does make those allusions. It's very fitting given the nature and the themes of this story. I don't think any other story could have really grasped onto that and been well done. Another interesting thing I like about this story are the illustrations. What's her name? Dave McKean does a wonderful job of portraying the Rogues Gallery, Batman's Rogues Gallery, in a different light. Joker looks like a demented, horrifying clown that's going to haunt my dreams for some time. Two-Face looks vastly different than how he's normally perceived. Clayface is just like, his skin is rotting. It's disgusting and gross. And I really like how Batman is portrayed. He's always sort of portrayed in shadow, and you never really see his complete form. The closest you get of seeing like any part of Bruce Wayne is the face, how it shows his teeth or something like that. But you never get like a full reveal of Batman's form, and I think that's an interesting way to show Batman, given that the other comics that I've read went out of their way to show Batman's costume. So this comic kind of plays on the fact that you know what Batman looks like, and so he's always hiding from the shadows. But it also, I feel like this art gets at the fact that this isn't a story about Batman, it's a story about the asylum, it's a story about the villains more so than it is about Batman. So you don't see his full design because, again, it's not a Batman story. So I think that's wonderful on McKean's part, and I do really want to check out more of his work. I saw that he also worked on Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, so I'm really interested in checking that out after I'm finished reading through the Sandman series, because that I just want to see if his art style is similar in those books, as it's very unique and it sets it apart from other comic books that I've read. I also like the realistic portrayal of the villain's insanity that you see throughout this story. The Joker is a demented clown whose choices are not guided by rationality, and he ends up killing people at random, and he has a weird relationship with Batman. In other portrayals, you see the Joker as a mischievous clown who's in it for the chaos and the laughs, and he's kind of portrayed as a bit cartoonish. And other versions just portray him as murderous, but very few have portrayed him in this way, as demented and kind of horrific looking. And I gotta admire that kind of view of him. And then a different portrayal of Harvey Dent, Two-Face, at the same time, where he's unable to make decisions. He's sitting in his own feces, and he doesn't make rational statements. He doesn't make what I would say normal statements. He talks about how the moon is a two-sided coin, and you see other villains who are making similar statements in a way that appears that they're not exactly completely sane, and they belong in this asylum. So wonderfully different portrayal from how you normally get the villain's portrayal. But this also raises a question that I don't think Grant Morrison completely intended, and that is, if this is how they're portrayed, why is Batman on an almost nightly basis beating up the mentally ill? That question has been in the Batman universe for a long time, and people frequently make jokes about it, but it's especially prevalent here. Like, if these are his villains, and they don't appear to be that much of a threat, apart from the Joker, but that's only because he has a gun on him, these other villains, like, they have mental illness. They're vulnerable members of society, and here's this billionaire rich guy coming down and beating them up on a nightly basis. And it's just like, Batman, you don't have to do that. You could just funnel money into the mental health system in Gotham, and you'd probably solve a lot of the crime and a lot of the other problems. So I like how that question is raised. Maybe not intentionally, but it's still there, and it's still something that has to be reckoned with when you consider Batman, and the fact that so many of his villains are placed in an asylum of all places. And then the final thing that I want to talk about is the underlying question in this story, and that is, does Batman himself belong in Arkham Asylum? There's a really good quote from Batman in the beginning of the story, and I'll read it to you. Batman says, "It's me. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that the Joker may be right about me. Sometimes I question the rationality of my actions, and I'm afraid that when I walk through those asylum gates, when I walk into Arkham and the doors close behind me, it'll be just like coming home." Which I think is an interesting way Batman to view the asylum. He fears the asylum because to him, he hasn't reckoned with his own mental illness in his life. And so when he walks inside of it, it's going to feel like, oh, I belong here because I myself have a lot of trauma and undealt mental illness that makes this place seem normal for me. I'm a guy who dresses up as a bat and beats up people. How am I any different than some of these people? And Grant Morrison doesn't shy away from that question throughout the rest of the story. Because Batman is shown to be enjoying the pain that he's dishing out, much like how Joker enjoys the pain that he is dishing out and engaging in chaos. He kicks Dr. Destiny down the stairs, and Dr. Destiny is in a wheelchair. And Joker says that Dr. Destiny can blink you out of existence, or something like that. But the dude is still in a wheelchair. You don't kick people down the stairs who are in a wheelchair. And it's like Batman has a real violence problem that merits him being in the asylum. And I like how Amadeus' Arkham story is told at the same time, because Batman and Amadeus Arkham have similar paths. Amadeus worked to house the criminally insane, much like Batman does. And Amadeus' story differs because he eventually started killing the mentally ill. And Batman merely beats him up. That doesn't really seem that much different to me, but I guess the difference here is that Batman doesn't kill, although he was shown taking pleasure in the death of another person in this story, so, that might be up in the air. And at the end of his life, Amadeus saw a bat flying toward him with symbolism, and that's something that Batman also saw. So, Batman and Arkham are both seeing a bat and being guided through that action to fight against the evils in the world. What makes them so different? And ultimately, should Batman be in this asylum? And the answer is probably. After Batman is done fighting off all the criminals at the end of his crime-fighting career, he'll have to put himself in the asylum because he hasn't dealt with that trauma. He hasn't reckoned with the underlying mental health issues in his past or in his present. So definitely some food for thought there. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth. A really good comic book, graphic novel. I wasn't expecting it to go that hard, and it went pretty hard. I gotta applaud Grant Morrison and McKean for doing their best to create a story that stands out from other Batman stories and other graphic novels in general. It reminded me of the Sandman, but it's somehow even more extreme than the Sandman comics. I would recommend it to you out there. However, there's a caveat, this comic book isn't for everyone. It might gross some people out. It might not be for small children. There's a certain kind of person that this is for, but I still recommend it because it's interesting Batman literature. So definitely worth exploring. If you read this before or you have something to say about my review, make sure you comment below. I would love to have a discussion with you about this very unique comic book. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can get Arkham Asylum out to the masses and talk more about mental health and whatnot and why it's bad that Batman is beating up the mentally ill. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck and your weird and Jokerish travels. Farewell.